Two CBS News exclusives. It's official. This is the warmest winter in America on record. And a warning about what's causing the climate change. A whistleblower accuses a major drug company of concealing the risks of a diabetes drug to get it approved. Also tonight, Bradley and McCain drop out of the presidential race. Who are they backing? Stay tuned.
This is the CBS Evening News. With Dan Rather reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. CBS News has new and exclusive information tonight about important changes in the climate. U.S. weather experts will officially report tomorrow that winter 2000 is the warmest on record in the USA and a record warm winter for the third year in a row. This comes as parts of the Northeast were at or near record high temperatures today. Example, it reached 72 degrees in baking and basking Boston. But these drastic changes can also be dangerous for the short and long term. CBS's Jim Axelrod has dug up the exclusive facts for you on the Weather Watch.
Up and down the East Coast, the calendar and thermometer disagreed again today as more than a dozen big cities set record highs. In more than 100 years of record keeping, the government's top weatherman now tells CBS News, there's never been a winter like this one.
This winter, the last December, January, and February, which just ended, is the warmest winter on record in the United States. Every state in the country for this past winter was warmer than normal.
If you're confused because you know you've seen your share of snow this winter, start by blaming La Nina, the unpredictable Pacific weather maker that creates ice breaking just north of New York City one week and ice skating in a t-shirt the next.
A La Nina type will give you both extremes, both the very cold times and the very warm, but it give you more warm than cold, and so when you average, you get the warmth.
Actually, the joggers might be getting used to shorts in winter. It hasn't been just this year. The last 3 winters are the 3 warmest on record, a trend that's raising concerns as well as temperatures.
I think it's one of the most fundamental challenges that faces us in the 21st century.
Alden Meyer sees more than just La Nina. In the climbing temperatures, he sees damage done by factory and automobile emissions. Global warming, he says, that requires a global warning.
It affects everything from the environment to food production to human health to the way we grow our food, the way we transport our goods and services, the way we live our lives, basically.
Come summer, the warmer temperatures and La Nina pattern could well produce violent storms and choking drought. Something to keep in mind when you watch a barefoot child on a playground in March. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, Washington.
Besides today's unusually warm day in the east, the upper plains, including the Dakotas, got another reminder this day that winter isn't over, even where it was shirt-sleeve weather just days ago. And amid talk of earlier, longer, and stronger tornado seasons caused by, among other things, global warming and La Nina, this twister was the earliest of the season ever to hit Milwaukee. It left a path of overturned cars, damaged buildings, and shredded store signs last night, but no deaths have been reported. We also have new and exclusive information tonight on the CBS Health Watch about the controversial diabetes drug Rezlin. About 500,000 Americans take it, most without problems. But this drug has been linked to the deaths of 58 people from liver failure. Now, CBS's Cheryl Atkinson, who's been investigating this, reports there are serious new questions about how the drug won approval. Cheryl?
Dan, CBS News has learned that a key scientist involved in Rezlin's approval now says it's too dangerous to be sold and claims that Warner Lambert, the drug's maker, skewed study results to downplay the risks.
Dr. Janet McGill was the principal researcher on one Warner Lambert study of Rezlin back in 1994. When she reported that 2 of her 20 patients taking Rezlin developed liver problems, she says she got a personal visit from 2 Warner Lambert officials who pressured her into downplaying the severity of the liver problems. She claims the company then deleted mention of those liver problems from critical test results data it submitted to the FDA to get Rezlin approved. As the Los Angeles Times first reported, there have been at least 85 cases of liver failure, 58 of those resulting in death since Rezlin went on the market 2 years ago, including Monica George, profiled in a CBS News report last month. McGill told CBS News the mounting death count prompted her to speak out. Declining to be interviewed on camera, Dr. McGill has written the FDA and Congress, saying it's time to consider taking action against a company that puts profits before the lives of patients with diabetes. Dr. Robert Misbin, the FDA doctor in charge of Resolin reviews, has also taken the unusual step of writing to Congress. I have been frustrated in my efforts to convince my superiors that the time has come to remove Resolin from the market. Congressman George Nethercutt is investigating Dr. Misbin's claims.
Sure, any doctor of that stature, an investigator of that stature, certainly gets my attention.
Warner Lambert told CBS News Dr. McGill's letter contains a number of inaccurate allegations, and we will correspond directly with the FDA regarding the inaccuracies. We are confident we have submitted all required data to the FDA.
Tonight, the FDA says it has begun a thorough investigation of Dr. McGill's allegations as part of its overall evaluation of Resolin's risks and benefits. Dan?
Cheryl Atkinson. On the CBS Market Watch, those red-hot technology stocks had Wall Street sizzling today. The Dow shot back above the 10,000 mark, but here's the real story. The tech-heavy NASDAQ closed above 5,000 for the first time ever. CBS's Anthony Mason reports on this latest milestone for the high-flying high-techs.
It took 23 years for the Dow to go from 1,000 to 5,000. The NASDAQ made the same journey in less than 5. Since July of 1995, it's up an incredible 570%, blowing by 5,000 today.
It just points out that the market is very smart. It's allocated its assets to the most dynamic part of the economy, and that's technology and the internet.
Just 8 years ago, when Bill Clinton was elected president, there were 50 pages on the World Wide Web. Today, there are 50 million.
This is an incredibly profound trend. We have 150 million people online worldwide right now. Over the next 5 to 7 years, that should go to 1 billion people.
So, says Merrill Lynch's Henry Blodgett, somebody's got to build the infrastructure for the exploding internet.
You need switches, you need routers, you need pipe, you need telecom lines. Also, you need software.
So the NASDAQ's hottest companies over the past year, Ariba, a business-to-business software company, up 800%. Juniper Networks, which provides telecom infrastructure, up 730%. And JDS Uniphase, a fiber optics company, up 625%.
People want to go where the action is, and they're willing to pay to play. And up and away for the NASDAQ, and we think it's going substantially higher.
Just how high? Some analysts say 6,000 is within range by the end of the year. And why not? 46 trading days. That's all it took for the NASDAQ to go from 4,000 to 5,000. Dan?
Anthony Mason, willing to pay to play.
Yeah.
Thanks. Florida or Cuba? The long and agonizing custody dispute over Elian Gonzalez may be nearing an end. CBS's Byron Pitts in Miami reports a federal judge heard both sides of the argument today, and his ruling is imminent.
By Miami standards, this protest was small, but inside federal court, the stakes were as high as they've been since Elian Gonzalez was found floating in an inner tube last November. The boy's Miami relatives pleaded for the right to seek asylum for the child they say who would be persecuted if he were sent back to Cuba.
The issue here is that a child, Elian Gonzalez, regardless of the fact that he is 6 years old, has the right to file a petition for asylum.
But lawyers for INS argue the only person who can speak for Elian is his father.
It is our hope that the court's resolution of the motions that were argued today will make it possible for this little boy to go home to his father.
The judge in this case could make his ruling as early as tomorrow. Meantime, there is another sign this international custody dispute is drawing to an end. Washington attorney Gregory Craig, the same lawyer who represented President Clinton during his impeachment, has been hired to represent Juan Gonzalez, Elian's father. Legal analysts say it's all part of the endgame.
Within very short order, perhaps a few weeks, Elian will know if he goes back to Cuba with his father or he stays in the United States.
It's now been just over 100 days since a little boy lost his mother and found himself caught between the Cold War passions and politics of two countries. A boy whose future depends less on who loves him, but rather who the law says should raise him. Byron Pitts, CBS News, Miami.
School officials in Mount Morris Township, Michigan, said today the 6-year-old boy who shot his first-grade classmate to death last week will be expelled for at least 90 days. That is the penalty under state law for bringing a gun to school. No criminal charges are expected against the boy. Still ahead now on the CBS Evening News, Gore and Bush survived the primaries, but not without political wounds, some self-inflicted. And what's McCain going to do? And a dramatic increase in harassment of gays in the U.S. military. In the presidential campaign, Republican John McCain suspended his campaign today, sent, quote, best wishes to George Bush, but withheld an actual endorsement, at least for now. CBS's Phil Jones reports what's up with all that and what may be next for McCain. Phil?
Dan, here in the tranquility of his Arizona mountains, John McCain brought his insurgent presidential campaign to an end today.
Therefore, I announce today, on this fine Arizona morning and in this beautiful place, that I'm no longer an active candidate for my party's nomination for president. I congratulate Governor Bush and wish him and his family well.
But there was no immediate endorsement of Bush, and McCain technically suspended his campaign. This means he will keep the delegates he's won, and that will give him clout and privileges at the Republican convention in July. There was a rally call today for the independents and Democrats who'd helped McCain upset the establishment in 7 states.
Promise me that you will never give up, that you will continue your service in the worthy cause of revitalizing our democracy. Our crusade will never accomplish all its goals if your voices fall silent in our national debate.
In Colorado, George Bush, who needs McCain's active support to win in November, said he'd talk briefly with the senator. After all the nastiness of the campaign, today it was only praise.
I want to congratulate John for fighting a good fight. He campaigned hard on what he believed. I know the competition is going to help us win the White House come November.
As for all the speculation about him running as an independent, McCain said today, I love my party. It is my home. And then John McCain took one last ride home aboard his Straight Talk Express. For the first time, no reporters, no questions. The bus will be gone, but the maverick inside promises to keep on fighting for reform. Dan?
Phil Jones in Arizona. For his part, Democrat Bill Bradley says he's out. Bradley pulled the plug today on his winless primary campaign and announced flat out that he is backing Al Gore. Bradley said it is time for Democratic Party unity, but he stressed he has no plans to join with Gore as a potential running mate. Both Gore and George Bush say their tough primary opponents tested their mettle and made them stronger for the fall campaign. Joining us now, CBS's Bob Schieffer. Bob, what about that the primaries make them stronger talk?
Frankly, I thought we saw the opposite, Dan. You know, when Bradley brought out that Gore does not always talk straight about his past voting record, that raised questions about Gore's veracity. That is not what Bill Clinton's vice president needs when he's trying to show that he is not like Bill Clinton. I think Bush fared even worse. He began as a good-natured fellow whose bipartisan approach as governor promised a big tent philosophy that would bring new people into the Republican Party. But then when he began courting the religious right and complaining about non-Republicans voting in Republican primaries, that turned off independent swing voters, especially in the population-heavy Northeast. And when Bush friends secretly launched sleazy attacks on McCain, Bush said he couldn't do anything about it, even though he thought the ads were not helpful to him. At the very least, that suggests that he lost control of his own partisans. Certainly that is not a plus. So I think it's fair to say that both men picked up some baggage here that neither anticipated he'd be carrying into the fall campaign, Dan.
Our chief Washington correspondent, Bob Schieffer. Just ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, new accusations that the U.S. military is not falling into line to stop abuse and harassment of gays. Under the U.S. Defense Department's official don't ask, don't tell policy, gays in the military are supposed to be allowed to serve as long as they don't reveal their homosexuality. But a new report offers evidence that it may not be working out quite that way, and President Clinton says he is, quote, concerned. CBS's David Martin has more about this.
As a young sailor aboard the carrier Eisenhower, Lori Smith says she endured constant harassment because her shipmates believed she was gay.
They called anything from lesbian to dyke. Gay shouldn't be in the military. You're not supposed to be here. We don't want you here.
She complained through Navy channels, but nothing happened.
I mean, I tried to talk to people. I tried to go to the chaplain. I tried to go to the lieutenant and tell them that this stuff was going on. And all they said was, you know, if it's nothing really physical that's happening to you, there's nothing really they can do.
Fearing for her safety, she admitted she was gay and was kicked out of the service.
Service members are coerced into telling, they're hounded, they're harassed, they're chased out of the service.
The Pentagon says it will not tolerate harassment. But a new report by a gay rights group says there were nearly 1,000 cases of gay harassment in the military last year, double the year before. The most infamous case was the beating death of Private Barry Winchell, a gay soldier at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. His murderers have been punished, but Private Winchell's mother, who is now suing the Army, says none of the commanders who allowed the anti-gay climate to exist have been disciplined.
There has been nobody that has been held accountable for the Army's part in the harassment.
Recent photos of graffiti at Fort Campbell still show a climate of hatred. The bat that killed Winchell labeled a fag whacker.
I've heard from servicemen that are afraid to talk, that are afraid to stay in the military. They've been threatened by, shall we get a bat? Do you want to end up like Winchell?
The Pentagon insists the don't ask, don't tell policy is working, but it has promised to look into the cases cited in today's report and take action against anyone who is guilty of harassment. David Martin, CBS News, The Pentagon.
A private jet crashed during takeoff today in Moscow, killing all 9 people on board. Among the dead, groundbreaking Russian journalist Artyom Borovik, a former special Moscow correspondent for the CBS News broadcast 60 Minutes. The chartered jet bound for Kiev reached an altitude of about 150 feet before crashing to the ground beyond the runway. More CBS News in a moment. Going against the current to save the salmon of the Great Snake River. There was another unwanted prize today for a majestic river of the Pacific Northwest, once the happy hunting ground for Native Americans and traveled by the legendary explorers Lewis and Clark. For the second straight year, an environmental group calls the Snake this nation's most endangered river with a dwindling salmon population. Keeping the fish from extinction calls for a radical solution, as CBS's Jerry Bowen reports.
Along the Snake River these days from Idaho into Washington state, people are taking sides in the Great Salmon War.
I don't want to say a war, but gee whiz, you know, I mean...
A high-stakes battle over the future of 4 dams that generate electricity and make the river navigable for barges taking grain and products to market.
We've sent a man to the moon and we've done all kind of wonderful things. Why can't they save the fish a different way than to destroy people's lives?
Lives would be changed by a plan to breach earthen sections of the dams to let the river and endangered salmon run freely. Years of barging the fish downriver to avoid dangerous turbines and million-dollar fish ladders to help them come home again haven't worked well. The problem is that a free-running river would be too low for the barges and power plants to run to.
What I did is take the lid off the can of worms and say, okay, let's look inside, let's make some choices.
Oregon Governor John Kitzhaber is one of the few politicians to side with the dam busters, but he wants compensation for any lost jobs and businesses.
I'm very prepared to support a dam breaching strategy in conjunction with other measures.
The Snake River dams are the biggest targets in a campaign to remove unneeded or environmentally harmful dams from America's rivers. The Matilaha here in California is also on the list, but it would cost an estimated $80 million to dismantle it just so fish can migrate freely upriver again. Proponents argue it will cost much more if the dams remain, especially the Snake River dams.
I think that if the salmon runs aren't healthy, the watersheds aren't healthy. And if the watersheds aren't healthy, our ecosystem isn't healthy. And if that's true, we're mortgaging this wonderful, precious gift we've been given here in the Northwest to future generations.
Environmentalists were lobbying hard in Washington today, but a final proposal by the Army Corps of Engineers isn't likely until after the elections. Meanwhile, the clock is running for the fish and dams alike. Massive structures the salmon can't live with, and some people claim they can't live without. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, Ojai, California.
We began the broadcast with climate changes on Earth. We leave you with new 3D views of Mars, courtesy of NASA's Mars Global Surveyor. These are the pictures to prove it when they say Mars has the highest volcanoes, deepest canyons, and largest impact craters of any planet in our solar system. And get this, turns out that early Mars blew its top, releasing tremendous heat up north and possibly producing big pools of water. The water is now long since gone. And that's part of our universe tonight. I'll be back later with 48 Hours. Here's a preview.
Trying to crack a serial killing spree after more than 20 years.
What do you remember that night?
Just about everything.
48 Hours uncovers new witnesses.
I said, that's the guy that attacked me.
Never forget. Tonight.
A strong, interesting 48 Hours tonight at 10/9 Central Time. For the CBS Evening News, Dan Rather reporting. See you again soon on 48 Hours.
For news 24 hours a day, CBS.com on the internet and on our interactive partner, America Online, at keyword CBS News.
Get expert advice on family vacations tomorrow on The Early Show. Experience CBS News.
Attention all stations concerned. There will be